A brief introduction to dragons. As we see dragon mythology all over the planet in various cultures, it's important to kind of dig into dragons because dragons are going to tell us a lot about what these people believe. And ultimately, we see a strong association with reptile creatures and ancient knowledge. And dragons are a big part of that ancient knowledge. So we'll run into and cross-reference mythologies like the Nagas of Hindu beliefs and towards the Middle East, and those gods definitely represented a source of wisdom for that ancient society. And we see that a lot. We see a biblical representation of snakes and snakes passing on knowledge through Eve, and in that particular case it's vilified. And there are other cases of vilifications of snake deities. We can see the story of Medusa of Ethiopia, who we recently did a piece on, and she's a prime example of how this association of a snake goddess, which was imparting great wisdom on a populace, has now been completely vilified into a monster. Dragons are some of the most nebulous, complex, and ambivalent of all animals in the natural or unnatural world. This famous creature has been the subject of mythology and travelers' tales for tens of thousands of years, dating back to some of the earliest mythologies. Its images have been used in religion, alchemy, heraldry, and medicine, and just a few. A dragon can be considered to be a symbol of many different aspects of power on the earth, both good and evil. When associated with water, it may represent the fertility of the soil, or herald floods, or maybe even a drought. It can be seen of a sign of heat within the earth, appearing in mythology as Typhon, the son of the Mother Earth, the fire-breathing dragon representing volcanoes. And even now, depictions of dragons appear in places where they're least likely expected to be seen, including Christian churches. A pagan dragon can be found in a number of churches, with foliage spouting from its mouth, denoting fertility. Perhaps, too, the dragon is an equally pagan concept and descends from the Green Man and other fertility goddesses. What is a dragon? Early naturalists believed that dragons were real animals. Often maps of foreign countries were inscribed with the words, "Dragons be here," usually on areas of unexplored wilderness, and books in the 17th century showed depictions of dragons next to reptiles such as lizards and snakes. Today, with our ability to visit nearly every spot in the world, we can be almost certain that a dragon in general form that we visualize does not physically appear anywhere on Earth at this present time. A modern depiction of a dragon might be that of four-legged, a long snake-like body with a barbed tail, a fierce head, bat's wings, sharp claws and teeth, and emitting fire from its mouth. Analogy again with dragons, snakes, and other reptile beings was not separated. Dragons were just like the rest of them. The word dragon or Draco appears to be used in Greek and Roman empires throughout the world and often used to describe a large snake, and the word dragon is actually derived from these two cultures. Drakon not only referred to a large snake, but also a flying creature. But many classic and early texts make a strong distinction between the legends of serpents and the legends of dragons. One of the first dragon mythologies that we see is the dragon goddess Tiamat, who appears in the Enuma Elish, which is the Babylonian Genesis text, and she's part of the creation story. The tablets tell of how in the beginning there was nothing but the two elements. Anpu, who was a spirit of fresh water, and Tiamat, who was a spirit of salt water and chaos. And she was portrayed as a dragoness with a serpent's body, horns, and long tail. And in the myth, Tiamat gives birth to many children who become the gods, and they eventually rebel against Tiamat and her consort, and that causes a great battle between this older faction of gods and this new pantheon of new gods, looking for control. And in the end, Marduk ultimately kills Tiamat in one of the most memorable battles in all of mythological history. And we can also look at the Yggdrasil dragon, which Is in Old Norse tradition, the ash tree of Yggdrasil, the cosmic tree of life, stands at the still point of the turning world and supports the universe. Its branches overhang the worlds and reach into the heavens, and the three great roots at the base of the tree transcend into the underworld, one twisting towards the frost giants, another reaching judgment seats of the Aesir, and the third reaching Nephilim, where hell reign. Underneath Hell's domain dwells the dragon Nidhogg, the Dreadbiter, who gnaws at the roots of the tree, attempting to destroy the universe. And that's what this dragon's role is, a very destructive force. Also in Norse mythology, there is the Midgardian serpent, who is Jornagan, who is a giant worm who encircles the earth, and through this giant reptile creature regurgitates the ocean and creates the tides. And it is theorized that when this dragon finally loses its grip on its tail, that this would bring about the calamity of the world. And the god Thor battles this creature in the end, in the final Ragnarok. So this dragon plays a major role in Norse mythology, and we'll look further at the Yggdrasil's dragon later, and also the Midgardian serpent. In very early times, dragons in the West were intimately connected with the earth goddess in particular, and women in general. The Pelagian myth of creation, the universal goddess creates the great serpent Ophion to become her mate. She soon becomes pregnant and gives birth to the universal egg. Ophion coils around the egg until it hatches, and out falls everything in the universe, from the sun to the smallest atom. But Ophion grows vainglorious and boasts that it is he who is the author of the whole creation. This enrages the goddess, who hits him in the head with the heel of her shoe, kicks out his teeth, and throws him back into the darkness beneath the earth. We had spoken very briefly of the Nagas, and of course this is a mythology that we have to explore. The Nagas are semi-divine, semi-human serpent spirits and of Indian origin, who are known throughout Southeast Asia. The Naga king Mukalinda is reputed to have sheltered the meditating Buddha from the chilling winds and rain for 7 days, protecting him with his hood and coils. Another legend holds out the king of ancient Cambodia married a Naga princess from a huge Pacific kingdom, from whom we are all descended. Nagas and the female Naginas were depicted in 3 different ways: completely serpentine, human with serpents emerging from the back of the neck, and half human, half serpent. Their natures are also threefold, being animal, human, and divine. Reputed to dwell in the waters of the springs, lakes, and rivers, Nagas control the waterways, from clouds, rain, and fertility to flood and droughts. Mahayanas divide the Nagas into 4 groups: divine Nagas, who produce the clouds and rain; hidden Nagas, who guard the treasures of the world; and heavenly Nagas, who, as the guardians of the threshold, protect the heavenly palace and also the temples of many major and minor deities. Guardian Nagas are often portrayed as coiled serpents with human heads. Fu Hai of the mythical Third Age of China and his consort Nu Kai were reputedly both Nagas. They were portrayed with their tails entwined in a 4-fold pattern. Ancient Chinese writers describe 4 types of dragons: the Tian Lung, or celestial dragon, who guards the dwellings of the gods; the Fu Kang Lung, or dragon of hidden treasures, who guards the hidden wealth of the earth; the very popular Xing Lung, or spiritual dragon, who controls the rain and winds; and the celebrated Ti Lung, or earth dragon, who holds the rivers and streams in its powers. In all, there were 9 types of Chinese dragon, including the Ying Lung, or winged dragon; Jiao Lung, or horned dragon; Pan Lung, the coiling dragon; Hao Lung, or yellow dragon, and various others. The number 9 is considered especially lucky in China. Dragons have 9 attributes and 117 scales, 81 of them male and 36 female. Chinese dragons are all associated with the masculine yang force. Chinese and Korean imperial dragons have 5 toes on each foot. All other dragons have 4 toes, but Indonesian and Japanese dragons have 3, possibly after the early Chinese 3-clawed Han style. Japanese dragons include Ryu, which is a large dragon with no wings, and the Tatsu native Japanese dragon, which is smaller but has large wings. In Japanese art, the dragon is never wholly visible, instead appearing partially hidden in the swirling winds or waves it represents. The dragons of North American Indians are more serpentine in shape than many of the European counterparts. They have snake-like bodies and nearly always portrayed with a horn or 2 or a jewel growing out of the back of its head. Large and immensely powerful, these serpents are again regarded as water deities, and like Chinese dragons, live mainly in lakes and rivers. They are depicted on masks worn by Indians for ceremonial dances, symbolizing the fertility associated with rain and lightning. The feathered serpent also appears widely throughout South America in central Aztec deity Quetzalcoatl, literally Quetzal bird snake, known to the Maya as Kukulkan, and in 3,000-year-old Olmec representations. As the magical morning star Venus, Quetzalcoatl emerges from the mouth of the east-born feather serpent. The inventor of the calendar, he is also, like the Chinese yellow dragon, credited with bringing the art of writing to mankind. The Hydra. Many heads are better than one. One of the earliest representations of the Hydra appears on the 14 BCE cylinder seal of Syria and portrays part of a myth where the fertility god Baal conquers the 7-headed dragon Leitan, a creature identified with the watery forces of chaos and disorder. In Greek mythology, the description of Heracles' fight with the Lernaean Hydra shows her powers of renewal. The Hydra was an awe-inspiring sight. She had a prodigious dog-like body and 8 or 9 reptile heads, one of which was immortal. For every head that Hercules cut off, the beast produced it twofold until he set the neighboring woodland alight. The battle seemed to support the suppression of Lernaean fertility rites, as new priestesses, like the regeneration of Hydra, constantly appeared in the temple on the banks of the river Enimor until it was burned down. The Bible has its own famous Hydra in Revelations, as it says in Revelations 12, verse 3, "And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon its heads." The constellation Draco. The Greek word Draco comes from a verb meaning to see or to watch, and dragons have a great reputation as guardians of wisdom and treasure. In Greek mythology, the dragon Ladon guards the apples of the tree of Hesperides for the Greek goddess Hera. Ladon, who was the virgin-born son of the Mother Earth, had 100 heads, and with 200 keen eyes was the obvious choice for a guardian. However, even with those advantages, he was no match for the hero Hercules, who shot him with an arrow and stole the apples. To commemorate this feat, Heracles bore the likeness of a dragon on his shield. The goddess Hera wept bitterly at the death of Ladon and set his image among the stars as the constellation of the serpent Draco. Draco, also known as the Red Dragon, is a large constellation of stars which winds around the celestial and elliptical North Poles and can be seen in the north sky positioned close to Heracles. Another Greek myth tells a different story of the time that Zeus and his followers battled with gods of the early mythological order. In the struggle that ensued, the new gods drove out the old ones, and Draco, who was lord of chaos, was counted among the elder gods, was cast into the sky by the goddess Athena. She sent his body spinning into a knotted circle where he remains to this day. In fact, the star Thuban Draconius, third from the tip of Draco's tail, was the pole star, center of the heavens, the age of stone, and the age of ancient Kemet. The legendary fire drake. Fire drakes were cave-dwelling dragons who guarded hoards of gold in cave mounds. In the Norse Volsunga saga, the giant Fafnir transforms himself into one of these fire dragons and carries his gold into a remote cave where he stays there quite alone. Fafnir's brother persuades a young student, Sigurd, to kill him. The youth is able to do this and afterwards cooks the dragon's heart. Typhon, Earth's destructive son, the son of Gaia, the Earth Mother, and fathered by Tartarus, the Void. He represents all of her most destructive aspects. His body from the thighs down were composed of coiling, poisonous serpents. His wings blacked out the light of the sun, and his head touched the stars. From his shoulders grew 100 serpents' heads, a dragon that licked with tongues, and from the eyes of his wondrous head, fire flashed beneath his brow, and from his heads, fire burned, and he glared. It's Adam's first wife. Ancient horned and fertility deities were combined into sinister horned and hooved Satan. The dragons of wisdom, flow, and fertility became envoys of negative destructive power. The serpentine dragon, Lilith, appears at the very beginning of the Bible in the Garden of Eden, persuading Eve fruit. The worm is a North European dragon, has a serpentine shape but lacks wings or legs, and is termed a worm or lindworm from Norse ormir, meaning dragon. The embodiment of stuck or stagnant energies, the worm has very few redeeming features. Described as a serpent with horned reptilian or horse-like head, natural habit is in a wet or dampy place like lakes, wells, the sea, or bogs, where it sometimes be found coiled around a small conical hill. So obviously we see many depictions of dragons and dragon-like creatures all over the world, from biblical references to mythologies from almost every corner of the globe. Dragon mythology is something that actually unites all mythologies, as we reference knowledge from serpents or serpent-type creatures in some way. It makes me ask, first of all, why do we see serpents or dragons vessels of knowledge? They obviously had wisdom, and while we refer to them guarding treasure, they were guarding precious resources that were often metals that could be used for the execution of spells or the conductive force of energy. So it's an interesting mythology that we have about dragons that I think we have to fully understand what mankind was saying about dragons as told through these individual mythologies and interpretations. Thank you again for stopping in at Nine More Chronicles. Don't forget to contribute your comments below. Let us know what you think as we talk about more mythologies.